White-blue Monument versus Temur Dynavolt. Lucas is going to try to run Todd out of creatures. Todd's going to try to run Lucas out of removal. See how it plays out. And land trades to start out. Looks like a Thraben Inspector from Todd. So already on game plan is going to be presenting threats, card advantage based threats.
Card that Tom Ross calls the best card in Standard.
Still true?
He still says it.
All right. Swing for one from Todd.
I don't know if it was ever true.
Well, I was wondering if it was still the claim. We see Selfless Spirit. That will get hit by Essence Scatter from Lucas. We go back over to Lucas. Much like a blue-red deck, he's really relying on cards like Magma Spray, Essence Scatter, Harness Lightning, Glimmer of Genius.
Now, not a ton of green cards in the deck. You have your Attunes, your Tireless Tractors.
That's it in the main. Just 2 Tireless Tracker. He's playing 2 Tireless Tracker and 2 copies of Shielded Aether Thief. So on turn 3, Todd goes for Bygone Bishop. That one a big win, were it not to get hit by the second copy of Essence Scatter.
Amusingly, Todd's more interested in the backside of the Aftermath cards in his hand. He has a Dusk Dawn, but he'd rather be dawning than dusking. There will come a time.
Dawn's going to be really strong if that ever were to resolve. So hitting for 1, Todd, first player to miss a land here. He stops on 3 as we go over to Lucas.
His land drops, of course, less important than Lucas's.
Right. Though Lucas doesn't play, I don't believe he has Gearhulks in the list.
There's 2. He's got a weird order.
Just 2? Oh, okay. 2 Torrential Gearhulks.
Yeah, his deck list's a little hard to make
I
out.
like
It's got
it.
Mountain into the spell column. It's
he put the Gearhulk next to the Glimmer of Genius. I like that. Shows intent.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Spell Queller. We saw in play Hanvir Militia Captain. Now tapped out for Todd. So end step he made a 2/3 and is untapping for the 2/2. Still has a clue up. So this transform card, a 2/2 on its front side, though if Todd untaps with 4 or more creatures, this card then also starts to generate its own card advantage, which we're probably not going to see in this match. It's a great target for all sorts of removal spells. On its backside, it is a star, where stars equals the number of creatures you control, and at the end of your turn, it makes a 1/1.
Pretty close to Glory Seeker in this matchup, though.
I do like the flavor where the army captain eventually becomes the cult leader.
That is good flavor.
Lucas continues to develop his land and actually keep his life total very healthy. He's drops down to just 14 on Todd's attack. I'll make that 11. It was 3 last turn and 3 again this turn.
And only 1 main deck copy of Sweltering Suns in Lucas's deck. A lot of pressure to find Torrential Gearhulk or to find the Dynavolt Tower and cast some spells real quick.
A swing again from Todd. He's hoping to not get 2 for 1 by Torrential Gearhulk. Do you see in Todd's hand, Oketra's Monument. He's picked up that turn. Dusk Dawn. He'll cast Thraben Inspector to start here. Makes a clue and then swings both. And from Lucas, we're going to get another Harness Lightning, and this one's on Spell Queller. Takes 1 and goes to 10. And then Todd will make the Monument. So these just continue to be slow card advantage effects. Oketra's Monument, a Thraben Inspector. They play well against Lucas's spot removal.
And if you'll notice, Todd played pre-combat Thraben Inspector, post-combat Monument. He was fishing for a Torrential Gearhulk.
Right, yeah, you might wonder why he'd ordered it that way. It looks like he lost out on a 1/1.
The counter spells in Lucas's graveyard, Essence Scatter.
Right.
Somewhat tempting to Gearhulk to Essence Scatter.
Player creatures main, player creatures main. And this a huge play. Lucas attempted Confiscation Coup on the Oketra's Monument. Todd responds with Metallic Rebuke, using the Clue token and Oketra's Monument to improvise.
I can definitely get behind 1 Mana Leak. And we see Cloud Blazer coming down from Todd. It's going to net him a 1/1 token off of his Monument. 2 cards and 2 life. Yeah, Lucas tapped too low to possibly have another counterspell. Just Spire Bluff Canal untapped there. And Todd just pulling very far ahead on cards here now. A couple Dusk Dawns in Todd's hand, and Gearhulk shows up. Won't be able to leverage them, but he's winning the damage race and is ahead on board currently. We see another militia captain joining the battlefield, another token off of the monument. If that one survives to Todd next turn, it will be flipping.
Cloud Blazer from Todd Anderson.
And Todd still has the clue lingering, so we'll see if Lucas is able to produce Sweltering Suns here. Again, not a ton of those, just one in the main deck, so not the most likely thing to have happened. And Todd has drawn several extra cards here, and he can just start casting Dusk with the intention to cast Dawn on the Aftermath on the following turn. If he's able to resolve that, he gets a lot of cards back, even in the face of Sweltering Suns.
Yeah, there's a pause right now here for a judge call. We will let you know more as we know more as to what's happening here. I believe the issue at hand here is that Confiscation Coup, there are no copies of it in Lucas's main deck. So players have been alerted to that. The judges paused the game. We're going to bring you back to the booth as that call is resolved. All right, so those of you watching here, we are in round number 8 here of the Invitational. We're in the standard rounds. Watching Temur Dynavolt Tower versus White Blue Monument. This is a game actually which really looks to be going Todd Anderson's way, first of all. It's really interesting. It's an aggro deck, but at the same time, this is an aggressive deck which looks to have positive matchups against removal.
I've cast more Dynavolt Towers than probably anybody should ever have, at least in the versions of the deck that I played. Temur Tower was actually a very good deck for a considerable amount of time in the format. Thraben Inspector is a particularly good card against this deck because it just replaces itself, and that's awkward.
So generally when that card's not a 2-for-1 is if you're a deck that can just block a 1-2, right? And you say, okay, yeah, crack your clue, that's fine, but your 1-2's not really a card. But out of Lucas's deck, he can't block a 1-2.
And Todd just has more cards that are in this vein. Oketra's Monument makes a lot of creatures over time if you're not killing them quickly.
I guess when they first cast it, it's card disadvantage, but not for long.
Right, yeah, it makes up those cards pretty quickly. There is some stuff here you genuinely don't care about. Hangman Militia Captain, whatever.
Yeah, that's a 2-2.
Yeah, don't care about that one. Spell Queller can be quite good against you, though.
Yeah, actually, Spell Queller, I'm interested in that one. So on the surface, it looks like it might be a 2-for-1. It takes a spell. At the same time, it gives you back the spell. So is it good against Dynavolt Tower, or is it just a 2-3 for 3?
Depends how good your aggressive plan is. In some games, it's excellent. In other games, it's just another creature.
I do really like it when you manage to hit a card like Essence Scatter or something like that with Spell Queller. Yeah, okay, so when they kill it, they get their Essence Scatter back.
Kind of. Right. Cloud Blazer is really problematic if you can't counterspell it.
Yeah, I was going to say, when that resolves against your Dynavolt Tower deck, that sounds horrible.
And this is a deck that does not ask you to really have counterspells in your deck. You don't want to have too many counters.
Right.
It's just casting a bunch of creature spells against you.
Well, that's I think we were seeing here is that Todd got ahead on the board just with 2 copies of Thraben Inspector. And him getting ahead there actually forced action on Lucas' side. Lucas has to do something main phase. And then the moment Lucas does, then Todd starts resolving more threats, the kind that want to be countered, but Lucas can't afford to hold up the counter magic.
And you saw in that game, Todd was able to leverage Metallic Rebuke, and it kind of happens when there's a creature deck that can leverage counter spells in Modern Magic. You know, if you go way back.
So Modern, not the format, you're talking like the last 5 years.
Right, current Magic design philosophy. If you go way back in time, you want to be all counters, maybe one creature. You know, Stocking Stones is how you want to end the game. But currently, if there's a creature deck that can play counter spells instead of a spell deck that can play counter spells, it's stronger. That's kind of been true since we saw Innistrad 1 standard. Delver Secret, Snapcaster Mage.
And then we've gotten that, Mono Blue Devotion, another deck that's really doing a similar thing.
Right.
And yeah, those decks are strong. I mean, this has been like the Spell Queller archetype really since this has been printed. I guess Snapcaster Mage, a similar vein.
Yes, just If you're able to apply pressure with counter spells, that's just so much more meaningful. The more resilient everything gets, the more robust creature design is. The more resilient you make creature decks, stuff that comes out of the graveyard, what have you. Actually winning games just matters a lot more with the current design philosophy. So creatures and counter spells is just a better recipe for success than spells and counter spells.
Well, and that's something you talk about with Delver, where you say, yes, in Legacy, right? Delver plays a lot of counter spells, a lot of cards that trade, but the difference between a control deck and an aggro deck is Delver wants to get ahead and then trade cards, whereas a control deck wants to trade cards and then get ahead. And it seems like that first plan of grab the board, then trade is just getting so much stronger all the time.
Then there's some other variables in Legacy. You know,
sure.
3-mana spells in your deck at all can be a huge liability. You just get wasted off of the mana to cast them in the first place. You know.
Well, that's what Temur Delver is all about, right? With Wasteland and Daze. I mean, it's. But yeah, the same idea is that these counter spells.
Well, you want to talk about Modern too, the actual Modern format. The counter spell deck is Stubborn Denial in a creature
Exactly,
deck.
yeah. Death Shadow with Stubborn Denial is the best way you can be countering spells. I mean, that if you compare that to like a Mana Leak deck right now in Modern. Mana Leak's a great card, but Stubborn Denial is a much better counter spell in the format.
And there are technically Cryptic Command decks.
You can play that.
It's a big ask for that deck to be successful.
Hope it doesn't get Stubborn Denials. That would
not where you want to be. Not where you want to be.
Yeah, but I mean, and I do really like what Todd's done with this. The inclusion of Oketra's Monument to me is really interesting because this is a 4 in his deck, and it's a legendary artifact. That's a huge investment to be saying, I want to play 4 of this legendary 3-drop spell that, and I understand that like in formats where your legend frequently dies or something like that, playing a 4 makes sense, but this is an artifact, a non-creature artifact. Like, to say that you want 4 of it in your deck is a huge endorsement.
Absolutely. And this card can really go off. Now, this blue-white deck, there's no aviary mechanics here. So he doesn't have the way to really go off with it. He just has, on average, better cards to cast into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he's trying to do is play a bit more of an honest game plan. Probably the worst card that he's playing because of Oketra's Monument is going to be this Hanvir Militia Captain.
Right.
It's like, you know, that card's not particularly... We used to see it, I think, the Invitational winning deck list from Max McVitie a year ago, we saw that out of the sideboard. This isn't a card that's seen much standard play. I get that when you're playing Oketra's Monument, it's better.
And this is probably one of those cards you put in your main deck with the intention of frequently sideboarding out.
Yeah. I mean, there are some other things, you know, Bygone Bishop, Cloudblazer. This is a bit of a strange crew of creatures here.
Bygone Bishop is one that always has seemed pretty close to constructed playable.
Yeah,
Cloudblazer less so.
We saw Cloudblazer in some Panharmonicon decks. Or like
You're
Blink.
Kinda proving my point here.
You know, the Eldrazi Blink decks usually played like 1. Bygone Bishop was that same Invitational that Max McVitie won. Jerry Thompson was very high on the card in his build of mono, of white-blue humans.
Yes.
Playing that as a go big, part of his go big sideboard plan where he brought in Bishops and Avacons. But yeah, you're right. None of these, I guess, these Cloudblazer, Bishop, and Militia Captain, certainly a strange crew to be putting next to Oketra's Monument. Now, the other thing they all have in common here is these 3 copies of Dusk Dawn.
Yes, the ability to just grab all this stuff back from your graveyard for 1 spell.
That's nice.
It's not as immediately impactful and game-winning as previous standard formats where we had Rally the Ancestors.
It doesn't put them into play. It doesn't put them on the battlefield. It's just your hand.
Right. But it does happen to have something of a sweeper effect on the front side.
Yeah, I was talking with Joe Lissette about this. He was saying, out of zombies, this deck is really hard. He almost feels like he has to board out Liliana's Mastery, because if he does, Dusk Dawn beats him.
It makes that card quite embarrassing.
Yeah, all your 2/2s become 3/3s. Great. Great.
2 thumbs way down.
Yeah, and your things just start dying there. So for those of you, thanks for your patience on staying with us. We are still waiting for an official ruling here on the judge call in our future match. As soon as we have that, we will let you know the head judge's ruling on that, and we'll go ahead and continue. All right. In the meantime, it's a match between Todd Anderson and Lucas Michaels. We will get back to that as soon as we know here.
It can be a delicate thing.
Yeah, absolutely. On the other side, Lucas Michaels' deck. This is interesting in that it's almost in the same spot as where Blue-Red Control is. He's playing Temur Tower, only lightly Temur. He has 2 copies of Tireless Tracker, and 4 copies of Attune with Aether.
Oh, the sideboard, there's a Manglehorn and some Bristling Hydra. Not a ton of green.
All right, so what happened here is the ruling here is that Lucas had a sideboard card in his main deck. He's issued a game loss. The game is going to go to Todd Anderson, and the players are going to go on to game number 2. So we're going to go ahead and bring you back into the match. Players are sideboarding. Lucas will get to choose whether he's on the play for the second game.
And that looked like a game that Todd was pretty easily going to win as well.
Yeah, it definitely was going in Todd's favor.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and bring the match. We'll bring you back to the sideboards between the two players. So on Lucas Michael's side, he's going to need to fight this fair fight. I don't know. Things that can trade more cleanly seem like a premium to me. He's got 2 copies of Bristling Hydra, 2 Byforce, 2 copies of Confiscation Coup, 2 Glorybringer, 2 Negate, and then some one-ups. Barrel's Expertise, Magma Spray, Manglehorn, Sweltering Suns, and Tireless Tracker.
So the second Sweltering Suns, that one's excellent for sure coming in. Manglehorn to deal with the Monument, I like that a lot. And I even like Byforce a good amount. Sometimes you get the Monument and a Clue token. You get a little bit lucky. So this kind of stuff to interact with this core Catcher's Monument strategy. You do still have to solve the Cloud Blazer problem, but there's really nothing for that. You can try to draw more cards yourself, which he has access to another Tireless Tracker, which makes some sense to me.
He has 4 copies of Essence Scatter in his deck, so those are clean answers. But outside of that, not much. I do like Glorybringer a lot here.
Yeah, Glorybringer seems totally reasonable. You can make up some card advantage with that one. Also fly over all those pesky Monument tokens. So you're kind of in trouble if Todd's generating a lot of those in the first place. Yeah,
the just 1 Sweltering Suns, and Lucas would love to see more of those in his board.
Yeah.
All right, on Todd's side, 3 copies of Essence Scatter, 3 Gideon Ally of Zendikar, 2 Angel of Sanctions, 2 Declaration in Stone, 2 Fragmentize, a Dispel, the 4th copy of Dusk Dawn, and the 3rd copy of Metallic Rebuke.
The Metallic Rebuke seems great. It really solves any problem. Lucas is playing the slow deck, casting spells. Some argument for the Dispel as well. A lot of 1-for-1 removal spells and instant speed here. The big find, though, is a 3 Gideon Ally of Zendikar. If you can get that on the table quickly, it's really hard for these slower blue decks to deal with Resolved Gideon. You really force Lucas to have Dynavolt Tower to answer that one at all.
Yeah, now, if Todd becomes what I think is going to be interesting is whether or not he can become too reactive here. Todd is still the threats deck. So I look at cards like, I guess, Fragmentize for Dynavolt Tower, Dispel for Lucas's removal, Metallic Rebuke. I like them all, but I'm worried that he could go too high on them.
Yeah, and the Fragmentize, I think, will stay on the sideboard for that reason.
All right, we'll have a second game. Lucas will be back on the play. Now, on this SCG Tour here, Season 1, we debuted our Infinite Challenge package, and that is going to be back for Season 2. Now, so if you didn't show up, haven't been to one of our opens this year, what this is if you want to come out for an SCG Open weekend, but maybe don't have the deck, can only play one day, or aren't interested in playing the format of the main event, we now have our Infinite Challenges happening each weekend. These are 2-day packages that include entry into all challenge events all weekend long. These are 4-round events with unique prizes to each event. They are held in every format over the course of the weekend. It's also another way to get our exclusive playmats. So we have an expanded side event schedule. You can read out more about this, starseagames.com/schedule.
A lot of Magic for one low price.
And we are on for game number 2. Lucas Michaels versus Todd Anderson. Lucas starting on the tapped land here, setting up his green mana.
The Lumbering Falls action. Okay, and then Evolving Wilds as Lucas's second land there. And we go back to Todd. He does have Port Town as a second land. He is revealing Prairie Stream there. So that'll enter the battlefield untapped. So now Todd has access to 2 untapped lands. Lucas will crack his Evolving Wilds to find basic Mountain. So his colors are now online, Mountain plus Lumbering Falls.
So an update here on the judge ruling. I think some of you might wonder if he had a sideboard card in his main deck and didn't call himself on it, why it would be a game loss. Well, the answer is that there is a Confiscation Coup in his main deck. It's just registered, it was misregistered as a different card. He had another card twice. So instead, it's not failure to D-sideboard, which would be he would have lost the match for. It is deck registration error, which is why he got the game loss.
Always a good thing to double check.
So first play here is going after the Essence Scatter on the Rogue Refiner from Lucas. Todd actually manages to get Bygone Bishop into play. And fortunately enough here, it looks like Lucas cannot kill it before the untap, so Todd will get to untap with Bygone Bishop.
Yeah, that's very fortuitous for him.
A swing for 2, Lucas to 18.
Looks like Todd has an untapped land and a Gideon, so he'll be weighing whether he wants to do that or cast some creature spells to get some clue tokens.
Yeah, importantly as well here, Lucas missed land drop number 4.
You got to be asking yourself, how many counter spells do you think are in your opponent's deck? When you start seeing Rogue Refiner and things like that, that leaves less room for that sort of thing.
If I was in Todd's spot, I'd expect a counter spell, but I'm not sure I care. You see he casts Bygone Bishop. The Investigate trigger is on cast. It's not on enter the battlefield. So even with a counter spell here, Todd gets a clue. We see Lucas cycling Censor, not casting Censor on Bygone Bishop. It would have been live, and it actually resolves land for Todd. This is very interesting. Maybe he has the Sweltering Suns.
Yep, that would make up a good amount of this ground.
Yeah,
here.
that's like that has to be it, and it is. Both Bygone Bishops hit the graveyard. This was a very bold move by Lucas. Until he cycled that Censor, he did not have the second red source. So by cycling it, he was pushing the chips in.
Well, the thing is, if you censor the second Bygone Bishop, you still have to deal with the first.
Yeah.
So high risk, high reward, though things got a little bit worse here immediately after.
Yeah, I mean, the follow-up from Todd was a great one. It was a copy of Gideon. Lucas is going to try to recover. He plays Tireless Tracker and a land. He'll investigate on his own.
This is a spot where if Lucas brought in Glorybringer, it would be really nice to clean up that Gideon.
Yeah, he's going to need to somehow kill 2 things with 1 spell. Glorybringer just made for that job. It's got to be front and center on Todd's mind here, too.
So every turn that he gets to untap with the Gideon before Lucas can produce a Glorybringer makes that a little bit less of an issue, though he does still have a lot of life to get through. Lucas still at 18. If Todd's creatures were on average a little bit bigger on their base, there'd be an argument for going for an emblem right now with the Gideon. Say if he had more X3s. With his creatures being X2s, they largely still die to much of what Lucas is casting.
Right.
Harness Lightning, Sweltering Suns.
And Todd keeps taking advantage of the fact that he is a turn ahead of Lucas's counterspells. So cast Cloud Blazer, make a Night Ally, and say go. Lucas really looking for Glorybringer here. It could kill the Gideon and Cloud Blazer. But Lucas stuck in a spot where he's tapping out main phase to answer Todd's play from the... He's using this turn to answer last turn's play as opposed to answering next turn's play.
Yep. His deck really doesn't have cards that are powerful enough to play this game and actually catch up.
Manglehorn out of the sideboard for Lucas. There's no Oketra's Monument for it to hit, but it did nab a clue token. But once again, Lucas is tapped out and Todd gets to untap with a huge amount of mana and no counter spell in sight. Declaration in Stone takes, or Stasis Snare rather, takes care of Tireless Tracker.
That one even better.
Gideon will plus, and here comes the team. It's a guaranteed 9 damage here.
Yeah, Lucas could jump block the Gideon.
You're okay, you're right. It's a guaranteed 6 damage.
Both of those sound very good to me.
Yeah. And there'll be the trade. Lucas losing half his life total here. Drops to 9. And more follow-ups on the way for Todd. You look at his hand here. Spell Queller and Metallic Rebuke. It's, you know, you talk about these blue-white tempo decks. They are so good at playing from ahead.
Yeah, it's really the role that they're trying to execute. You see, no Oketra's Monuments necessary here, as Todd's just kind of leveraging the old blue-white flash deck that we had even as far back as when people were casting Aetherworks Marvel and Emrakul the Promised End. These cards are still powerful.
So Lucas going to have to make some sort of move here. He's facing down a lethal attack. Dynavolt Tower from Lucas. He doesn't have any energy in play. Todd says sure. Pass from Lucas. The Spell Queller in Todd's hand should just about do it. Pluses up Gideon, swings the team. Here's an attempt of a play from Lucas. Shielded Aether Thief. Todd will Spell Quell. And it is going to be Todd Anderson finishing a perfect 4-0 in Standard. He moves to 7-1 entering the second day of competition. He's going to be in a just 1 win off the lead.